as they descend very dramatically into the ocean, to feel majesty and awe and wonderment. And your heart does reach for something greater than what you're seeing. And that's what creation does. Creation bears witness to God. And we have to learn to revere that. And we are to tend it and care for it. So there is a whole theology of creation that is not New Age, that is truly Christian, that has to do with being responsible with what has been given to us. Then we can employ also, and we're all talking here about resymbolizing the heart. So reading good books, learning to love creation, but then we have to learn to read the symbols in the heart. For example, employing a metaphoric understanding of past incidents and memories can help us access the symbolic import of these events. And what I mean by this is that a metaphoric understanding means reading events and incidents in a figurative manner to access all the levels of reality and all the ways in which these have affected us. For example, someone who has been sexually abused. That is a literal thing that has happened, and it needs to be treated with the fact that this really happened and it is severe. But look at it figuratively as well. What does it mean for a little one to have been overpowered by another person who is older than them? What does that mean? And what is the symbolic import of that? That the person feels a sense of being overpowered, or that overpowering people make them feel like they're being crushed and suffocated. And it is as you begin to read the event on a symbolic level that you say, here's some of the meaning that came into my life because of this literal event. And you say, it causes me to want to run, and to flee. And that's one of the struggles that people who've been abused have. They want to run and flee. They have a fight or flee syndrome. Oftentimes they flee. They have this fear of being annihilated. And they have this wrong sense that I need to run away. And this begins to unlock the gravity of the events when we can begin accessing the metaphoric aspects here. It can also work the reverse. I'll just tell you one story. I was working with a woman now almost 20 years ago when I was first coming into this kind of ministry, and I was receiving so much healing myself. And she said to me she had a dream of her father sexually abusing her. And she said, I guess that really happened, but I don't remember it. And I remember thinking that I felt uncomfortable with her saying that to me. And I said, what if that didn't really happen, and you're not dreaming a memory, but the dream is symbolically communicating to you that you felt overwhelmed and abused by your father, and in your dream, the sexual abuse is the way you are symbolizing being overwhelmed. And she said, I never thought of it that way because my father is a very overwhelming personality, but I don't ever remember him touching me. Now, this is not to say she didn't have a repressed memory that could have come up later, but as far as I know, she had no actual memories of this. And I think actually she was dreaming symbolically the fact that he had overwhelmed her, and the way her heart contained that was in the picture of abuse, sexual abuse. But he had been emotionally abusive. Now, it's also important for us to witness healthy and holy relationships between men and women within the body of Christ. This helps to re-symbolize our hearts. I mentioned how early on in my healing process, I was watching healthy marriages. And I worked for many years with Pastoral Care Ministries. And in the early years, there were a handful of couples on the team at PCM that were really a blessing to me, especially Ted and Lucy Smith, Paul and Lynn Berenson, and Bob and Connie Berner. I saw a beauty in their marriages, the way they supported one another, the way they loved one another, a real give and take between husband and wife, but a real strength in these husbands to put their arms around their wives, especially in time of need, to really be there as a place where they could lean And to me, that meant so much. It was so beautiful. And that helped to re-symbolize my heart, because so many of the marriages that I saw as a child were not that way. There was not that mutual giving and taking, that really meeting each other in their needs. Now, there are also imaginative exercises we can do in prayer which can cleanse the imagination, to pull up weeds of fear from our heart, and to free the imagination to become holy and Christian. I heard a very fine Christian teacher recently make a terrible mistake. He was saying to his audience that once you've exposed yourself to pornography, it's there in you forever. Now, I know for a fact that's not true. Pornographic images do not have to reside in the soul indefinitely. You can invite Jesus into those images, and his presence will dispel them. Or you can actually ask the Lord to put his finger on those images and reach into your imagination and pull them out. Or if they're right there at the top of your imagination, you can in prayer see God's presence before you with his hands open and pull those images right out of your mind and place them into his hands. I've done this in conferences. For the years that I worked with Leanne Payne at Pastoral Care Ministries, Leanne always held healing sessions where people did just that. And that is very important, friends, to know that you can always pull those images out of your mind and give them into the hands of the Lord. Because in this world where we are inundated with messages through symbols and pictures and billboards, you will see images that you are to get out of your mind. And you have to sometimes go into prayer and do that just by yourself. Pull it right out of your mind and give it into the hands of the Lord. Recently we were at the supermarket, and I have young sons, and Nancy saw these magazines with these scantily dressed women on the front. She took the whole package of magazines, brought it up to the service desk and said, "This is at the eye level of my son." And I don't think that's a very good idea. And the manager said, "You're right, ma'am, I'm sorry." And more people need to do that. Because it's wrong. It's wrong to expose young children to adult sexuality. It robs them of their innocence, and it desensitizes them to the beauty of the human form when it should be rightly shared with them on their wedding night. It depersonalizes human sexuality and makes it a two-dimensional image. It is important, friends, to keep our imaginations clean of diseased images coming through the internet, television, movies, music lyrics, comic books, novels. The internet provides access to unlimited images that can hold the imagination captive. And I think men in general just need to get real. Most of us, friends, should not be on the internet alone in our office. And we should have someone who can always ask us, "Did you access anything this week you shouldn't have? Or did something pop up that you did not intentionally access, that's just suddenly there?" Television and movies can assault our mind with images of sex and violence and a twisted view of the supernatural. At one point, I had a handful of friends who were watching this television so regularly that was showing the supernatural as being investigated by this New York City cop. And they were getting all wrapped up in this. And finally I said, "I'm a little concerned that the images of the supernatural that you're talking about are not actually genuine images of the supernatural. This is not just a metaphysical phenomena that there's no answer to. The supernatural is divided into good and evil. You have angels and demons up there. Are they calling this phenomena angels and demons? Or is it just this mystical supernatural thing that has somehow caused something that is unexplainable to happen?" And they said, "Oh, Mario, you're being just such a prude." And I said, "I am not. We have to be careful what we put in our minds, because they were essentially desensitizing themselves to supernature. Yes. Yeah. Then when the time came for them to quite possibly discern good or discern evil, they might not have been able to discern it because they hadn't trained their mind in that. And I have to be very careful with that because I have a very active mind. music lyrics that have a strong content of violence and sexuality, comic books that show distorted images of men and women and of masculinity and femininity. I mean, the images of men and women in comic books is just absolutely appalling. Novels that have plot lines that portray reality in a skewed view. We have to be careful of that. Not that we shouldn't read them, but that cannot be our regular reading. It's okay to objectively read something that has a skewed view of reality and say, this might be clever writing. But you can't take that in. You can't have a regular diet of it. The wonderful reality is, friends, is when the images of the heart reflect Christian reality, then God can more easily use the images within our hearts to speak to us. Now, simply because God can cleanse our imagination does not mean that we should have an antinomian attitude towards things that can pollute our imagination. And what antinomian means is no law. There are laws. There are rules that we need to live within. And that's why I would say to so many people, think twice before you go and see an R-rated movie. Think twice before you go see a lot of PG-13 movies. Because some of what is communicated there ought not to filter into your soul. Your soul is precious. And if you're going to fill your soul with something, fill it with something good and beautiful. And there are good movies out there you can rent. There are movies that are really interesting and that are done beautifully and artistically. And they're not all about evangelism either. Some people think, it's only good if it's about evangelism. Because Jesus redeems our imagination for beauty and devotion to God. Take to heart the words of Oswald Chambers and take deeply into your heart the beauty of the Scriptures and the beauty of God Himself. And your imagination and your soul will be free. Free from images that are pornographic and violent, and free for images that are beautiful and that nourish the soul. God bless you.
In 2 Corinthians 4:18, St. Paul exhorted the Corinthians to fix their eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen, for what is unseen is eternal. He is encouraging them to use their imagination. Our imaginations need to be cleansed often from violent images, from pornographic images, from images coming in from television and movies. Sometimes images coming in from seedy romance novels even. And we can pull those images out of our imagination and give them into the hands of Jesus. And then He gives back to us good and beautiful things to replace what He has taken from our mind. What are those things? The Holy Scriptures. It is as we take the Scriptures into our hearts, as we memorize them, that our hearts are re-symbolized. The beautiful images of the liturgy, the baptismal font, the beautiful stained glass windows. We need to take these things into ourselves. The creeds, wonderful music, great worship. All of these ways are means for filling our imaginations with things that are good and true and beautiful. In our next teaching in Alive Again, we will look at applying forgiveness. There we will see how as we have freely received forgiveness from the Lord Jesus, we are then to freely give forgiveness to others. And it is in that reception of forgiveness and in the giving of forgiveness that all healing is found. Meanwhile, hold this truth dear. Jesus has redeemed our imagination for beauty and also for devotion to Himself. God bless you.
Holy water pouring from your skies fills a river in my heart, cleansing all that's within. Let it wash across my brow and touch my eyes as I turn away from darkness and lay down my sin. Sweet rain, let it fall, let it fall. Let it wash through every room within my heart. May my imagination be purified. In your body may I fully take